So my dad's Ronnie Ray, the senior, double bass player. And my mum's Margaret Ray, she was a music teacher, retired. My mum and dad split up when we were about 14, 15, so my dad's been with Fiona Duncan since then, kind of thing. So she's our stepmom, she's a jazz singer. My eldest sister, Kathy, did sing jazz for a while. She lives with, her partner is Julian Arguelles, the saxophone player. They live in Portugal. And then Ronnie Jr. is a jazz piano player, and he lives in Nice, and he's really well known on the Nice jazz scene there, plays with everybody. My brother John lives in New Zealand, in Wellington, with his wife and his 2 children there, and he's establishing himself. He's been there about
10 years?
More than 10 years, maybe 14 years or something now. Yeah, and he's really established now in New Zealand. I don't know if he'll come back. We hope he won't. That's the hope. And my name's Gina. I sing sometimes with my husband Tom Bancroft, who's a jazz composer, drummer. I'm in a band called In Common, which is an improvising band with some Indian musicians. And also in a band he has called African Groove Machine, which is a band for some African. We like to travel, so music's a brilliant way to meet other people from other countries, so we get right involved with that. And then there's Sylvia, who's married to Clark Tracy, the drummer, and he used to manage Stan Tracy till he died. And you're a jazz singer, maybe a bit retired, but you might be thinking of coming back, are you?
Yeah, when I moved to England about 15 years ago, and I didn't really fancy the vocal scene there. It was a bit like, I'd already been doing it for 20 years, it was a bit like starting again, and I just didn't fancy it. So, too many divas, not enough talent. So I got into management, and managed my father-in-law Stan Tracy for 10 years. Got into promotion, run a jazz club every week in St Albans called Hearts Jazz. Run the Hertfordshire Jazz Festival. But I've just came back up the road to, because the folks are getting to that age, so I've decided to move back. So I'll probably start doing gigs again, just to
So look out!
Noise the scene up a bit again, because it's getting a bit too safe. So yeah.
My dad's a professional jazz bass player. So I'm number 4 out of 6, and
I'm number 5.
Number 5, so
Number 5, yeah. It was always on in the house when we were kids. My mum was right into it as well. She liked people like Ella and big bands and stuff like that. And it was just always being played in the house. If not by record, it would be live.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of musicians in the house, quite often.
Quite often. No, it was good.
So, yeah.
We were really blessed with, live music in our house. We were kind of brought up in a relatively poor, well, we were poor, in Sighthill, in the outskirts of Edinburgh, and there was 6 children in a 3-bedroom flat, so you can imagine. But we did have a drum kit and a piano and a double bass.
That's right.
So we had a drum kit in our bedroom.
Yeah. We had, in our bedroom, we had 2 sets of bunk beds, one for my brothers and one for me and Gina, a drum kit in the middle and a piano on the wall. And that was really it. There wasn't much room for anything else.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of music being practiced or played, or my dad would come back for gigs and quite often bring the band with him, so there would be, live music.
I was in brass bands, we were in brass bands,
Yeah.
and orchestras and piano lessons, and
choirs.
it was more important to do that than it was sort of academic side of things. So, I mean, my mum was a teacher, so there was that academic side. We had quite a strange childhood because we were poor, working class. But my dad was a jazz musician and my mum was a teacher, so theoretically we were middle class, but we weren't middle class. It's not in the lifestyle not financially, certainly. But career-wise, if you based class on your parents' career, then yeah, we were middle class, but we weren't, if you know what I mean. So the approach to music was very like work, you know.
Yeah. So it wasn't like when you came in for school, you didn't go and do your homework. You went and did your practice.
Did your practice.
That
you
was the
practiced
first
your
thing.
skills. I mean, it was a serious business in our house. It wasn't like, oh, isn't it cute? Sylvia's came home with a clarinet. It was like, right, you know, books, scales, arpeggios. You know, it was work.
And then when you started sort of getting the hang of the instrument, whatever it was, my dad would appear with like tunes, like jazz tunes or like.
God damn it!
Yeah, that was quite.
It was quite intense.
Intense, that's the word.
Yeah, it was intense.
It was intense.
So our house was crazy. There was
Yeah.
just music coming out of every bedroom.
Yeah, we had a 3-floor house, and there was like
council house, yeah.
piano on the bottom, drum kit in the attic, and then everybody in between. So it was quite noisy, certain times of day.
Yeah.
Well, I did sort of get put
Yeah.
off for a few years, but then I ended up going back to it.
Same.
So maybe like between about 15 and 17 or something. Just didn't.
Yeah. I think that's normal though. I think that's the sort of age you discover boys and drugs,
Yeah.
alcohol.
I had a baby when I was 18. I think that sort of took care of that as well. So then started getting me into looking at a career, and I sort of just fell back into music really.
But how did you both start gigging then? How did that all come about?
I started with, when I was about 18, 19, I went on holiday with Sophie Bancroft and went away to Greece, and we were just sort of backpacking around Greece and found ourselves quite often waiting for ferries. And we just started getting into a tune, and Sophie was obviously started singing then. She had been working with my brother Ronnie, and she just started teaching me tunes, but I knew a lot of tunes anyway, if I just knew them, if we'd been exposed to a lot of music, and she was sort of filling the dots, you know. And then, so we did that for a couple of weeks, just doing tunes and duets and having a laugh, basically, with music. And when I came back, she just phoned me up and asked me to do a dep for her, which was with my brother Ronnie. So it was quite weird, because I was working in this pub called The Shore in Leith, in the kitchen being a KP. And then that's where the gig was as well. So I'd be like working all day for the same money I got for doing like a 2-hour gig. And I thought, oh, there's something wrong with this picture. So then I just started doing gigs after that. But it was probably Sophie Bancroft's fault.
Yeah, I blame her for a
It
lot
was her
of things.
fault.
Yeah, she's to blame for a lot.
And she was a really big help, like sort of vocal coaching.
Same with me. I played keyboards in bands when I was younger, and Penny Whistle. And Sophie had lived in England for a while. She was in Oxford for a while, and then moved up after she had her daughter. I had a daughter around about the same time, so we were kind of together a lot. And I played whistle in her band. And for some of the tunes that I didn't have the right key whistle, penny whistle for, I would sing the part, like la la la, whatever. But I wasn't a singer before, so I was about 24 then, 25. And she encouraged me to sing more, and then we ended up writing together, and then we ended up as a duo for many years, Sophie and I. So that was kind of how I started in the jazz vein. But interestingly, all our brothers had moved away, so because they were very dominant on the scene. You know, John, Ronnie, Phil, and Tom were very dominant in the scene then, and there's a lot of pressure when your family are musicians as well. So they were all abroad. I don't know what they were doing. They were all away, and there was this little window for Sophie and I think, to come up. And you were doing a lot of jazz gigs with Brian, Kellogg, and I don't know. There was a lovely wee time then.
Aye.
I think.
That's good.
And I do think it's because the boys had
A lot of pressure had gone.
gone away, so we weren't compared or something. I don't know.
Well, I think everybody's got different experiences. Personally, myself, I've never found it an issue. I've never had a hard time with the guys because I've been a woman. Ever, really. So, you know, but I have heard of women that have had hard times about it, you know, but personally, I've never, I don't know about you.
I think I've had a lot of stuff, obviously because I'm far more attractive than you.
Oh, that'll be it, aye. That'll be it.
But yeah, I used to be in a band called Swirler, which with Kevin McKenzie and Tom and Dave Millen, all these people were in it. Was Dave Millen in that band? Maybe. John Spears. Spearsy was the bass player. Great band, it's like jazz funk band. And often we would go to gigs and he would, the sound guy would just ask somebody to tap the mic. So it's like I didn't matter, I was just the singer. That can happen if you're... and Sophie and I, when we were gigging, we would get things like, oh, who writes your material? And stuff that's like, we do, But generally, yeah, it happens. I've in a band for 10 years, nearly called the Baby Sisters, so it's 3 girls, and get that all the time. All the time. It can be patronising, it can be... it definitely would not speak to us the same way. They wouldn't speak if we were men. They definitely wouldn't have spoken to us. Just with that patronising, you're just a woman thing. It can be extremely frustrating, but unfortunately, you get used to it, and you just answer them with your music. So then, once they realise you do what you do very well. I'm saying it's generally sound people. Unfortunately, after. Don't start.
And kind of picking up from that, is it just a coincidence that every single woman that I've interviewed so far for the archive are singers? Is that the only option?
No.
Not at all.
No. I know loads of women that are like sax players and piano players, and in fact, on my last album, there's a lot of women on it. The piano player Zoe Raman, she's amazing pianist. You know what I mean? So just maybe.
I think singing is a common instrument for women to take up. I think the danger of it is that it is something we all do naturally. Everybody can sing, so it is an easy option. But then to study music, to know what key you sing in, to be able to count in a band and command a band, it's not easy being a singer. By the way, it's not just you can ask any drummer. Well, hang on, I'll tap something on the drum.
Any musician,
you come out, or any, you come out, talk to the audience and perform to the audience.
Yeah, singing that
and have
mic.
everyone looking at you, whether you want it or not. It's really, really not easy. But I don't think a lot of singers do themselves favours by being, not educating them, not giving themselves a musical education. There's so far you can get with just raw natural talent, but I think at the end of the day, the reputation and the jokes about female singers, a lot of them are true.
Yeah, that's true. I think the thing with jazz in general, though, there's not a lot of women in jazz in general, Yeah. I think there's loads of different reasons for that. And in my own experience, I've had like a real hard time for guys, like boyfriends, because most of the people that I know are men, in the jazz scene. So it's it can make people quite jealous, and if they don't really understand what it's like to be a musician or to live the musician's lifestyle. But also I think as well it's sort of went a bit nuts in the jazz scene with women, because there's a lot of box ticking goes on, I run a jazz festival, and quite often I get criticism for not employing enough women. But the bottom line for us is it's not really based on gender or race or anything. It's based on talent. You know what I mean? So if you can play your instrument and you're good at it, then yeah, we'll give you a gig. But we're not giving you a gig just because you're a woman to tick an Arts Council box, you know what I mean? Which quite often happens. And not just with women or gender. It happens with race. It happens all the time. I think I'm getting criticised as a festival promoter for not promoting enough women. And I'm a woman. You know what I mean? It's like
Margaret Thatcher was a woman. It doesn't mean anything self. The thing in Scotland is, I think role models are really important for young females in schools and stuff. I mean, there's not a lot. I'm highly critical of the National Jazz Orchestra for the lack of women. Always had a lack of women. I think one of the best musicians to come out of that scene was Laura MacDonald, and she's a phenomenal musician. She's a good friend.
Cheers.
She is a massive role model to a lot of young girls, you know, and any women that are playing in jazz are, you know, they have a weight on their shoulders because there's so few in Scotland. There's so few, and I think there's a huge problem there that the National Jazz Orchestra has, I think, no women at the minute. One woman, one female. It's an absolute joke. Yeah, sorry. I don't understand how they get funding.
Could be based on talent.
But you got to start. You got to start with the role models. Where do they come from?
Mm-hmm.
Where do they come from? How does it start? You know, you've got to. It's scary, the lack of women.
What's it like at the moment if you were anyone, but then particularly perhaps a woman trying to get into jazz at the moment? Is it an easy career to pick just now?
I don't think it's an easy career to pick if you're a guy either, you know. I mean, it's a really hard game. It's a really hard game because it's
a minority music.
It's a minority music.
It always will be, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like there's not a lot of gigs out there. There's not a lot of funding out there. You know, compare it to like folk music or pop music or classical music, which seems to get the biggest share of everything for some unknown reason, you know. But yeah.
It's a hard gig, but I don't think you choose to become a jazz musician. I think jazz chooses you. I think we were brought up from the womb listening to jazz, so
yeah.
It's what we are comfortable with, and most of the people, well, all of the people that we play with are totally comfortable with improvising. And classical musicians, I know a lot of wonderful musicians, but they're not comfortable improvising, and I think that's the biggest difference. So I think jazz chooses you.
Yeah, it's probably right, eh? I'm going to get that in a t-shirt.
Yeah, jazz chose me. I'm special.
I'm special.
Very special.
So are you talking about in Edinburgh, and in which case, what kind of year and what was the scene like at that particular time? At
sort of early 90s. Yeah, so I had Sophie in 92, so we're talking about 93, 94. The other thing that started happening was that jazz musicians and folk musicians had started hanging out a lot, just hanging out, and then inevitably started playing together. So there was a band my brother John developed called the Giant Stepping Stones, which had like Tommy Smith in it, Phil Bancroft, Freddie Thompson, who's a stalwart of
folk scene.
What Sandy Bells he plays at, and you know, various. You had to play something that you didn't normally play, so everyone was on a level playing field, if you like. So I was playing penny whistle. That's when I started playing penny whistle. That was an incredible band. So that was a real mixture of jazz and folk. And same with Sophie and I. Our music was kind of folky, jazzy. So this new genre was coming out.
Yeah.
At the time, it was kind of mid-90s.
I started working with Jim Sutherland then. He's a big folky musician. He comes from Durso. Aye. And that was the same sort of thing. I wasn't in the Stepping Stones, but we started a band with Big Jim. It was mostly folk musicians and jazzers as well. Mm-hmm. And that's when I got Gina involved, because we'd been doing studio work, and we sort of came to the conclusion it was either backing tracks and computers or a massive band, and we ended up with a massive band. So Gina was one of the singers that I brought in because I'd been singing with Gina my whole life, so it was quite
and
easy.
In fact, Sophie Bancroft, and it became Some Otherland.
Yeah.
So this was a band that had jazz and folk musicians in it as well, Some Otherland. So yeah, there was a really exciting scene then when we first...
Yeah, we used to rehearse in a pub, you know, so there'd be like 20 musicians coming and just have a rehearsal. So it was really good, really
good times.
Yeah, good laugh. Yeah.
I think because I'm married to a jazz musician as well, so there's a lot of opportunities. I went to Africa for a while because Tom was studying drumming, and that was life changing. I took my children there and everything, and that was incredible. Been to India, been to America, been all over Europe, all to do with either playing or Tom was playing or I was, you know, tagging along with the kids or whatever. Yeah, it's an absolutely brilliant lifestyle, but there's no regular money. I mean, if you're looking for a career in, you know, there's no regular money. You have to learn to work on a budget, and money's coming and money's no coming, and you know, it's really, you know, and sometimes people don't pay you and stuff like that. Not everything you do is paid, not every rehearsal. So there's a lot of your time. So when you say you're charging like, you know, £500 to do an hour, you're talking about years of practice, the setup, the buying the gear, the everything. You know, it's not just that hour you're getting. You're getting somebody who's honed and studied their profession.
Yeah.
You know, that's what you're paying for.
You were talking about, you know, when you started, there was a lot of support and a lot of help. Do you give that to young up-and-coming jazz musicians now? Is that still the way that people get kind of nurtured and brought on into the scene? Describe what that's like today.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's something like Sylvia and Clark who've got a club that they'll, you know, you will give, and Clark will deliberately, I mean, you talk about the kind of age of guys he works with.
Oh, he deliberately, it's a bit like, deliberately employs younger guys, and we will, like, just about every season, guys, I mean guys or women, / I just call them guys. All right, guys,
Yeah.
you could be a guy.
Okay, guy.
Like every season that we do, like 3 or 4 seasons a year, and every season we'll put in a bandy just to young people who are like no one's ever heard of, or just to give them a platform to see what it's like to play. You know what I mean? And we do things at the festival, like we have Hearts Youth Jazz Festival that come and do stuff like that, you know. But when I was starting to sing, when I started off, I just used to follow people. That, like, for example, Fiona Duncan, who's like one of the top jazz singers in this country. She became a sort of mentor to me. And in fact, I learned how to drive so that I could take her to gigs. You know what I mean? So, because it was just like, and I used to go to all of her gigs, you know, and constantly going through her record collection and asking her questions and stuff like that. You know?
There has to be gigs. There has to be gigs for kids to go to.
Yeah.
To see people, role models, people to look up to, and aspire to. So I mean, I think that is not happening enough. Certainly not in Edinburgh. Maybe a bit more so in Glasgow. It's always had a kind of healthier jazz scene through there. But this is something that, you know, needs to. I mean, we had Bill, God rest him. He really tried. He would put on at the jazz bar in Edinburgh on Chambers Street. He would put on gigs and give people a chance. You know, he would give younger musicians a chance to play, and that was it basically. There's not a lot of opportunities, and I think you'll have to do what we did and just kind of basically hassle and stalk your favourite musicians and just go and see them playing whenever they're playing. And
I think a lot of kids though nowadays, they don't really have the opportunity to do that because there's not a lot of gigging opportunities. So they'll maybe end up going to uni or something like that. And my husband's he lectures at university, and quite often he's a drummer, and quite often he'll ask the kids who is their big influence in drums, and none of them can name like a top jazz drummer. It's like incredible, you know. So well, why are you here? You know, and it's like, well, we're just ticking that degree box, you know, and it's really got nothing to do with music. So that's quite bizarre. It's like sort of went full circle in a really weird way.
I think education is one side.
Yeah.
So get them educated. I mean, it's hard. I mean, I try and do my wee bit because I'm a primary school teacher. And the other day, I was doing a thing on Romans, and I played Duke Ellington's Such Sweet Thunder. And the kids went absolutely mental. They absolutely loved it. So I try and get sort of covert jazz in there whenever I can. And you know, talk about jazz. But it's such a minority music that I think we were brought up with it. And most of the musicians I know, somebody in their family was a jazz musician. So that's how they, you know, but as far as radio and mainstream media, you know, you've got your... You normally just take the piss out of jazz, you know. It's like, yeah, nice jazz. Yeah. You know, it's like this kind of... It's not like that. It's crazy. It's a crazy scene.
And the promoters as well are quite responsible for the way the scene's turning out, you know, because it seems to be it seems to be bizarre concept to somebody to just have a jazz festival. It's like, you know, "Oh, we can't do that because that's not going to sell enough seats. We have to have a jazz / blues / pop / reggae festival this week, you know, or soul festival or something like that." And, you know, when you look at other genres of music, like classical music, you would never get that. You would never get people dumbing down the genre. And, you know, you might get an occasional young
because they're
a
funded.
cappella
They're more
boy
funded,
band in the classical thing, but they're still stay in the classical genre. But like with the jazz thing, the dumbing downs
Drives you
I think
crazy.
it's really responsible for diluting the genre, and it's not right. But that comes from promoters not believing that jazz sells, and it does. It does if you.
But I mean, so
if you're
what if
doing
it doesn't?
right.
If it's subsidised by the government, so then you go up the chain and go to the government. This is an important genre in music that must survive. It must survive. We must be teaching children, teenagers, all the way up, have gigs, have festivals. We must keep it alive. And the people that are, I mean, the amount of times that me and Tom have not taken any money for something just so that there's a gig. You guys will be the same.
Yeah.
You've not paid yourself because you want the thing to happen.
Yeah.
That just happens too often, and you will not find that in a lot of other genres of music. So there's a real passion there. I just wish it went further up.
You know, there's no furlough for jazz musicians, you know what I mean? And there's no gigs, so there's no money. So quite a lot of people
It's been horrendous.
you know, the mental health thing. I know loads of people that are cracking up because they're like basically losing their livelihood, and not only that, but like playing jazz is quite a outlet, you know, for a person to get out whatever's in there. You know, it's a really good release. It's a really good sort of
Therapy.
vehicle to
Psychotherapy.
psychotherapy. Aye,
Yeah.
but not being able to do that is like, you know, it's like tying somebody up and putting them in a cupboard. You know what I mean? You can't do anything. You can't, you know, you can't make any money. You can't
Express yourself.
Express yourself.
Yeah.
It's really bad, and there's no support by the government. You know, here or in England, or
Well,
you know, it's a bit like there's plenty of support for classical
No,
musicians.
there was Help Musician. The Help Musician did. I got a grant from a fund from them at lockdown because I'm also a supply teacher, so I had no furlough and I had no gigs. I had suddenly my entire world stopped. I had no way of making any money at all. So I did get a little bit of money, but apart from that, I've been completely relying on my husband to support me, and I'm blessed for that. And I think there's a lot of people do not have that support,
Yeah.
and also the mental support. Yeah, because you're cut off. We were supposed to be in Egypt doing a couple of concerts there. That all got cancelled, and lots of things got cancelled. So.
And nobody gets paid if it gets cancelled.
I mean, the whole country was, the whole world was in the same situation.
Yeah.
So, you know, not to complain really,
But
but
I feel quite let down by the government, though. Really let down, you know, because it's like some people have went under. You know, some people that are just like, you know, and they come out with ridiculous things that like, will fund you for retraining. You know, it's
oh yeah,
it's got to be the biggest insult on the planet to tell somebody who's been doing something for 40 years. You know, okay, here's
Retrain.
a way to go and retrain because your skill isn't really that you know, valued.
Aye.
Well, it's ridiculous because it's one of the most important things in the world is music. You know what I mean?
Of course, especially jazz.
And finally, it again so happens that everyone I've met seems to be married to a jazz musician. But does that come with the territory that you end up married to another jazz musician?
Holy moly!
It's a bit incestuous, the Scottish jazz scene, really, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah. But I guess it's like I was saying earlier, it's about understanding. You know, if you're with another jazz musician, there's a lot of things that can just go unsaid because they understand. You know, you don't have to explain
Yeah, just like I've no money.
frustrations or
It's like,
yeah.
you're a jazz musician. I understand that.
Or if you've not had a gig for a
Yeah.
month, why you're actually sitting pulling your hair out and getting a bit depressed, and because there's no outlet for it. But you don't have to say, if someone's another musician, you don't have to explain yourself, which I guess helps a lot, you know, in a relationship. Well, it's sort of like the mother-in-law for hell, really, to start with. Jackie Tracy, God bless her. She wasn't very impressed that I was a singer because apparently my husband's last few girlfriends were singers, and sort of explained to her that I come from a very musical family, and you know, she doesn't have to worry about me stealing his time to write arrangements for me, because I could sort of do that myself and stuff, you know. And then she produced the Jazz Wise magazine, and at the back of it there's an article on Stan Tracy, my father-in-law, saying the godfather of British jazz, you know, and she's like, well, look at that, you know, there's Clark's dad, you know, because I hadn't really heard of him, ashamedly, you know, before I'd sort of got involved with Clark. And, well, my dad had mentioned him, but that was about it. But, and then I sort of took the magazine off Jackie, and I went, yeah, and this is my dad. And I went to the middle page, and there was a double spread on it said Ronnie Ray, the godfather of Scottish jazz. And I was like, so there you go, you know, and that was like,
Touché.
that was it. That was her clamped after that, really. So we got on really well after that.
Good.
Yeah.